Intermittent fasting has taken over wellness culture. Celebrities swear by it, influencers promote it, and millions believe it's the key to effortless weight loss. But a landmark 2026 study just analyzed 22 clinical trials involving nearly 2,000 adults, and the findings might surprise you. Today we're separating the hype from the evidence. I'm going to walk you through what this research actually shows and help you decide if fasting is right for you. Here's the headline that shook the wellness world. Intermittent fasting doesn't produce more weight loss than simply eating fewer calories throughout the day. That's right. The most rigorous review ever conducted found no significant advantage. But wait, before you throw out your fasting app, there's more to this story. Because while the weight loss results might be similar, the question of whether intermittent fasting works for you personally depends on factors these studies couldn't measure. Let's start with what intermittent fasting actually is. It's an umbrella term covering several different eating patterns that restrict when you eat rather than what you eat. The most popular version is 16-8, where you eat within an 8-hour window and fast for 16 hours, typically by skipping breakfast or dinner. Then there's 5-2 fasting, where you eat normally 5 days a week and dramatically reduce calories, usually to about 500 on 2 non-consecutive days. And alternate day fasting does exactly what it sounds like. You alternate between regular eating days and very low-calorie fasting days. Proponents claim these methods offered something special beyond simple calorie counting, that the fasting state itself triggered metabolic changes that supercharged weight loss. The theory sounded compelling. During fasting periods, your body supposedly switches from burning glucose to burning fat, entering a state some called metabolic magic. But here's where science enters the conversation. Cochrane reviews are considered the gold standard in medical evidence. They're systematic, rigorous, and notoriously conservative. In February 2026, Cochrane published their comprehensive analysis of intermittent fasting. They examined 22 randomized controlled trials, the highest quality research design available. They only included large trials with at least 100 participants each. In total, nearly 2,000 adults were represented in this analysis. And the conclusion was clear. When compared head-to-head with standard dietary advice, intermittent fasting did not produce significantly more weight loss. The lead researcher stated plainly, intermittent fasting just doesn't seem to work for overweight or obese adults trying to lose weight, at least not better than conventional approaches. Now, this doesn't mean fasting did nothing. When compared to no dietary intervention at all, intermittent fasting did show modest benefits. Participants who tried intermittent fasting achieved an average weight reduction of 2 to 5% at 6 to 12 months, compared to those who made no dietary changes. That's meaningful, but not dramatic. We're talking about losing perhaps 5 to 12 pounds for someone starting at 200 pounds, over half a year to a full year. But here's the critical finding that challenges the core promise of intermittent fasting. A separate study published in December 2025 isolated the eating window variables specifically. Researchers had participants follow an 8-hour eating window, but kept their total calorie intake exactly the same as before. The question, does the timing itself matter? The answer was definitive. Time-restricted eating did not lead to measurable improvements in metabolic or cardiovascular health when calorie intake remained unchanged. The 8-hour eating window failed to improve insulin sensitivity. It failed to improve cardiovascular markers. The metabolic magic simply didn't appear. This suggests that calorie reduction, not the eating window itself, may be the real driver of any weight loss benefits people experience with intermittent fasting. In other words, when people lose weight on intermittent fasting, it appears to be because they're eating less overall, not because of when they're eating. I know this might be disappointing to hear, especially if you've invested time and energy into a fasting routine. But understanding this helps us make better decisions. The Cochrane researchers were careful to note that their review focused specifically on weight loss outcomes. They weren't studying other potential benefits people claim for fasting. Some advocates point to autophagy, a cellular cleanup process that increases during fasting. Others mention potential longevity benefits observed in animal studies. However, A comprehensive review in Endocrine Reviews noted that few trials have examined long-term results of intermittent fasting, making it difficult to guide chronic disease management. The same review flagged potential concerns worth knowing about. Some research has indicated risks of bone fragility associated with certain fasting protocols. Additionally, increased inflammation markers, specifically C-reactive protein, have been observed in some individuals following fasting regimens. These findings don't mean intermittent fasting is dangerous for everyone, but they do suggest that it's not risk-free and certain people may need to be more cautious. The intermittent fasting community has pushed back on these findings. Some argue the review lumped together different protocols that may have varying effectiveness. They have a point. A network meta-analysis found that modified alternate-day fasting appeared most effective among the different approaches, reducing weight by an average of 5.18 kilograms. Others argue that even if weight loss is similar, intermittent fasting might be easier to follow for some people. And that's actually a crucial point worth exploring. Because here's what the clinical trials can't fully capture. Personal preference matters enormously. The best diet is ultimately the one you can actually stick with. For some people, having clear eating boundaries simplifies decision-making. Instead of constantly thinking about whether to eat, you just check the clock. If you're the type who does better with rules than constant moderation decisions, a time-restricted eating approach might genuinely help you eat less overall. But if skipping breakfast makes you irritable and more likely to overeat later, then fasting might actually backfire. Self-knowledge is key here. The Cochrane researchers acknowledge this nuance, noting that while intermittent fasting may be a reasonable option for some people, the current evidence doesn't justify the enthusiasm seen on social media. So what should you actually do with this information? Let me give you some practical guidance based on what the evidence shows. First, if your primary goal is weight loss, understand that intermittent fasting isn't a shortcut. Total calorie intake remains the fundamental driver of results. If intermittent fasting helps you naturally eat less and you find it sustainable, it can absolutely be a valid approach. Just don't expect metabolic magic beyond calorie reduction. Second, be aware of potential risks. If you have concerns about bone health, inflammatory conditions, or blood sugar regulation, discuss fasting with your healthcare provider first. Third, focus on what's sustainable for you long-term. Any dietary approach only works if you can maintain it, not just for 8 weeks, but for years. And fourth, remember that weight isn't the only measure of health. Sleep quality, energy levels, mental clarity, and sustainable habits all matter too. The biggest takeaway from this research isn't that intermittent fasting is bad. It's that we should approach it with realistic expectations rather than treating it as a metabolic miracle. If you've been doing intermittent fasting and it's working for you, you feel good, you're maintaining a healthy weight, and it fits your lifestyle, there's no reason to stop. But if you've been forcing yourself through a fasting routine that makes you miserable, hoping it would deliver superior results, this research suggests you can let go of that pressure. If this kind of evidence-based health information helps you make better decisions, consider subscribing. We break down research like this every week, so you don't have to wade through the studies yourself. The field of nutrition research is constantly evolving. What we understood 5 years ago looks different today, and 5 years from now, we'll likely know even more. That's why Cochrane reviews are so valuable. They synthesize the best available evidence at a given moment and help us navigate the often contradictory world of health claims. The honest truth is that weight management remains complex. No single dietary pattern has emerged as dramatically superior to others for the general population. What matters most is finding an approach that helps you eat appropriate portions of nutritious food, that you can sustain over time, and that supports your overall well-being. So here's where we land. Intermittent fasting is a tool, not a magic solution. It works for some people because it helps them eat less overall, not because of special metabolic effects. The 2026 Cochrane Review gives us permission to be honest about this approach, appreciating what it can offer while letting go of inflated expectations. This content is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your doctor before making changes to your health routine. Thanks for listening.